What do we mean, actually, when we say what works?
Understanding what works means you have evidence that that's actually happening. We happen to, at my organization, over a 20-year history, yes, that means I started when I was 10 years old, in case you're wondering, have really used data as part of the DNA of our organization to learn, to continuously innovate and improve what we do, learn some more, and do it again, so that we can go to school districts and communities across the country and say, kids need learning opportunities outside of school. But not just that, they need exactly a program that looks like this, and it'll make exactly this kind of difference for them.
As an educator, what we think we do well is use data. And so when I got into government, what I realized is that government had lots of data that they do not use. And when they do use it, it's not used appropriately. I think most of us can agree that in government there are tons of sacred cows, and the sacred cows are hidden when data isn't opened up to people who have an opportunity to criticize, analyze, and use that data to help determine the way forward.
As Tony indicated, cities and school districts are great at collecting data. With the new open data emphasis that I think we're all embracing, even more so. The problem is, what do you do with that data? We need to turn that into some useful dashboards so that policymakers can track trends, be more strategic in the goals that we set for ourselves.
One of the challenges is there's a lot of compelling causes and a lot of areas to invest. We're not really faced with oftentimes a good decision or a bad decision. Oftentimes we're faced with differing good decisions that we have to make, and those are tough decisions. But the data helps us to understand the return on investment of a particular decision.
The vast majority of work when it comes to housing homeless veterans or educating third graders, those resources, 98% of them come, 99% of them come from government. So the question for philanthropy is there a way of serving as a catalyst to lift up outstanding examples of policies and programs that deliver better results? And you often will hear a lot about social entrepreneurs, and I have a great one sitting next to me here, but I think as Tiffany can attest, that for every social entrepreneur who's making a lot of things happen outside of government, there's someone who's a leader who's equally entrepreneurial inside government that's finding a way to bring those services to more people.
And if you ask the average journalist, here's a school with a terrible dropout problem. It's getting worse. And here's a school that has reduced a 50% dropout rate to 20% over 3 years. Or here's a hospital that has a 50% cesarean rate, and here's a hospital that has a 19% cesarean rate. Which is the story? Most of them will say the bad school is the story, or the bad hospital is the story. The theory of change has been the world will get better when you show it where it's going wrong, which is probably not real in terms of how humans actually behave. We say the problems scream and the solutions whisper. So it's really important to draw as much attention to those positive deviants in our society as to the negative deviants. And I believe that would really reduce polarization, because polarization comes from a deficit mentality, a mentality that we have to circle the wagons, protect our own stuff, because the people out there are not very trustworthy. And that's a myth that has been created I think, by journalism.
There's more data and evidence than ever on what could work, and it ought to be just a matter of that, right? So why isn't it? Why can't you just, okay, we know this works, so why aren't we doing that?
What we're missing, what our data and evidence is missing, is a companion narrative. And so it's missing the story that helps to trumpet the good things that are happening.
I've seen families and community leaders say, why invest in these low-income kids? They can't learn. We're wasting money. Many people, why put the money there? They can't learn because they don't see enough of the stories of, it working. And when they do, they see the single story of a child who overcame odds, and you think they just got so lucky, or they were just so phenomenal. And I don't think you have to be extraordinary to overcome the odds. And I think lots and lots of kids are overcoming the odds, and they just don't know enough of those stories. So people actually need to hear the stories to believe it's possible, because there is real resistance to using the data and to doing what works.
There really isn't a constituency good government, right? That what we're talking about here is delivering programs to people who have grave need of them and for programs that work. So there's a collective choice that needs to be made to devote resources to them. So long as these are someone else's kids, then I don't think we're getting that breakthrough. But if we start to say, well, okay, if we're governing ourselves in a city or a county, and here's what we owe each other, that I think starts to change the discussion.
I want to comment on that. I didn't come up with this phrase. I learned this phrase from Roddy Taylor of the Sundance Institute's documentary film program, who talked about the goal of the social impact campaign is to expand the class of the aggrieved. Meaning, if you can make your audience see that they are an audience that benefits from the social change that you are advocating, then you are able to create a broader constituency.
I think it was Martin Luther King that said that a genuine leader is not someone who searches for consensus, but someone who molds it. We need the help of storytellers if we're going to move the needle on compassion and on getting funding for other people's children. I don't need to convince anybody of the need for police officers or wastewater treatment plants, but I do need help molding consensus around a early childhood education program or things that people perceive as solving other people's problems.
There is often a tension between the information that the philanthropist or the foundation or the corporation knows is really important, and they really want that information in there, and then you're there as a storyteller saying, all the information in the world ain't going to mean anything unless people are being touched emotionally. So our job is to be a cipher between the human heart and the hard statistics.
I think as a storyteller, because I'm looking for a character, and I'm looking for a character that an audience could identify with, I want to find the everyday person who's tackling a big social problem with the means that they have at hand. Those are the people to support, those are the people to tell the stories about, because they're the ones who can inspire the person next to them who's also an everyday human being who sees that they can do something.
I'd also encourage you, that person may not be the person you like the most. It may be the person who's always at the city council giving you the business, but those are interesting characters. Our goal is access. If we can watch you struggle and show people that you're struggling, I guarantee you that will propel this story ahead. Nobody likes to see everything perfect and wrapped up with a bow. We like to see the process. I just encourage you to think about that. I know it's scary, but in the end, people go on that journey with you, and as long as you're not corrupt, then it usually works out for the best.
Great gratitude for the stories you tell. They are leading us to changes in our hearts and minds, and hopefully policy too. Thank you all for being with us. Have a great festival.